Welcome to the Supper Talk podcast again. Welcome, and this is where we have all those dinner time conversations that you don't want to have with your family. My name's Steve, and this is my son Chris.
Hello.
And today we're going to talk about a few things, but Doge and their impact on American society is going to be one of the things.
Yeah, because I mean, it's definitely Elon's fault that I got a whole bunch of shit on Saturday for posting the picture about the Cybertruck.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and you just mentioned before we got on, you were talking about getting your passport and how it was frustrating. Well, every federal office, everywhere in the country, is either dealing with, uh, uh, you know, somebody who they didn't plan on not having being gone is now gone, or I guess it's and or everybody is freaked out and wondering if this is their last week at work, you know? So
See,
it's making
and I'm looking at it from that is a very compassionate perspective. This morning's perspective, I'm like, man, I really hope Doge fixes the problem that I had at the courthouse this morning, because I'm trying to get my passport because Haley and I want to go to Canada, and clearly the best time to get your passport to leave the United States is the day that the president is about to make an announcement that will make everyone else in the world really excited for Americans to come visit them. So today was a good day for the passport. And I have a bunch of cash from tips. So I'm trying to just use my tips money to pay for this whole thing because it's like $130 to get your passport processed. And there's the state processing fee, and then there's the federal process or application fee that goes to the U.S. Department of the State. And they say that they can't accept cash for the larger payment because they need to make sure that that money gets to the federal government. I was like, so so you're reporting to the federal government that issues the cash that it has to be legally accepted as tender everywhere, but the state can't communicate with the federal government in a way that I can't give you cash, and that should be just fine. And arguably, if Doge does what it's supposed to do, then this minor inconvenience will go away and things will communicate better.
yeah, and like uh this is the last year that unless something changes, but this is the last year that we're going to be allowed to pay our taxes with a check.
Weird.
Yeah, isn't
You
it
know,
crazy?
this was really funny. This whole morning it wound up being a little bit longer, and it's funny that you mentioned that because it brings up a story from the bank. So because of this whole thing, I've got cash, and I don't have any ability to pay them because I have to have either a check or a money order because the federal government also doesn't take debit cards. So the lady at the courthouse is like, well, you can go down the street. There's an ICCU, and since you have an ICCU membership, you can go and they can get a member or they can get a money order set up for you. So I leave, I walk 2 blocks down to the bank, and it's this girl's first day. And she is getting a lot of opportunities to learn from me because she's never done a money order. She's never accidentally misspelled department, so that she's never needed to cancel a money order and then reissue a money order. And all the while, the other tellers and the managers are busy. So she's just kind of like, I'm waiting on somebody. So we're having a conversation. I'm telling her about how Haley and I want to go visit Banff, and that's what I'm doing. And she had told me that she had been to Banff and that I should go visit Jenny Lake. So we're having a really nice conversation. And then I just bring up this idea. I was like, so this is a weird one, but we used to drive around a lot whenever we moved. And I remember when we were in Niagara Falls, going from Alaska down to Georgia, my parents had traveler's checks. Does anybody do traveler's checks anymore? Or like, what was it? because they were traveler checks, and what were the other ones that American Express did?
I can't remember, but I do remember getting all those travelers checks. But
Yeah,
and I do remember the American Express things too. They were like a that's who was doing the travelers checks.
yeah, and so we just started talking about it because she's old enough to know exactly what I referenced, and both of us have this moment where we're like, "This is the first time I've thought about travelers checks in about 30 years."
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like everybody uses Venmo, everybody does digital. So like I understand why it's moving in a direction where the IRS won't take checks, but at the exact same time, you are going to eliminate some people's ability, and especially when you talk about old people that are completely stuck in their ways. And the inconvenience that it's going to provide to people that are like rural old people that don't have a local place to go to, and they've been doing it by paper and sending in a check for years. That's the people it's going to impact. It's not going to impact people like me because I'm going to be like, oh yeah, digital, here's my routing number, here's my account number. That's probably going to be enough.
Yeah, the building that's right next door to my apartments is it's an affordable housing uh, complex for senior citizens, and some people who have disabilities, but it's mostly senior citizens. And I'm telling you, it's like, oh, well, just go, go to the bank and get a credit card, or go to the bank and get a cashier's or check or a
Can't
money order or whatever.
necessarily do that if you're not physically capable of doing that.
Dude, you would be surprised. And it's not like these people are lazy and they're because I mean they're out in their walkers every day on uh in the park, and it takes them like an hour to walk around the park
Yeah.
one single time. But they're I mean it's literally like, there's the old Benny Hill um comedy show where they pick up their walker and they move it forward 3 inches, and
Yeah.
then they shuffle like 4 or 5 times to get move that three
Yeah.
inches. Then they pick it up, and everything is just like so painfully slow. But and like one of the gals, I stop and talk to her every once in a while. She speaks English, but she doesn't really speak English that well. So you have to be very patient in order to have any kind of a conversation with her. And exact same thing. She goes out and she walks, and she has a person. I don't know if it's a relative but she has a person who shows up every day and takes her for a walk around the park. Um, and there's another guy that does it, and this guy's kind of funny because uh, he he uh, he he falls sometimes, and when he falls, he hurts himself. So he walks around the park with a cane, wearing a bicycle helmet. So, and anybody who would walk by, you'd see a guy walking around the park with a bicycle helmet, and
Make an
you would laugh.
assumption. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
you're just like, well, what's up with this guy wearing a bicycle helmet? Well, he wears the bicycle helmet because he doesn't want to hurt himself when he
Yeah.
falls. And
You know, that's I don't know if you remember when I'd posted it the night that got me to quit drinking. Like the whole thing that happened was we found out that the uh uh alcohol actually like lowers my blood pressure, and there's just some kind of response, and it gets so low that I trigger a vasovagal response, and then that's when I have one of my pseudo seizures. So I had had one beer with Brad, and like we were splitting a beer. We were talking about how COVID impacted the gym and how COVID impacted the barber shop and what we were going to do to move forward. It was like December 2020, and we split one beer. And that was enough to trigger one of these events. And I literally fell face forward and broke my face open. And I bit through my lip, like there was a huge gash on my eye, and I broke my part of my cheekbone. Um, and I was terrified of alcohol because I didn't wanna fall again, and, like, feeling that kind of vulnerability, I tried quitting drinking many times prior, but, there's always a reason to come back, but that fear of falling, that had been the 2nd time it had happened, and the 1st time it had happened, I fell and hit my, temple on the edge of a corner, nearly made myself blind, so the 2nd time that it happened, I was like, "I cannot fall again." So when I hear about a guy who's wearing a helmet because he's worried about falling, that's a tragedy to me. You're right. It's the exact same kind of thing where you look at that and you'd be like, why does this dude got a helmet on? He's just walking around the block. I remember when we were living in Hawaii, and Nita had come to visit us. And we were walking out to the car once, and she had slipped and fell, just leaving the house. And you and mom had run over and rushed. And I never really understood what that was until I went and visited them. Oh gosh, this was probably about 6 or 7 months ago. We were coming back from Idaho Falls, and we stopped in Twin Falls before we came home just to visit, Nita and her husband, Fred. And Fred is very, very old and very frail. And there was a day we were talking about Apple products, and I was making a suggestion for them to get the watch because it has fall detection. And that's one of the reasons that I like having the watch is because I know I have falls. I know I have these seizures. It terrifies me that that might happen when Haley might not be around. I'm talking to Grandma Nita, and she's talking about how Fred had gone out one day, just to the mailbox, and he fell, and he couldn't get back up. He had broken his clavicle, and he just was there in immense amounts of pain for, I think it was like 3 to 5 minutes until one of the neighbors saw him and then got Nita to come out. Like, this is the type of community of people that are vulnerable to all of these things that are happening with Social Security cuts. The lady that you're talking to, that English is probably not her first language, that one of the cuts that I was reading about is if her caregiver that's coming to her on a daily basis doesn't have a Social Security number, they want to cut her benefits because the money would be going to somebody who's not within the United States system. So now she's going to suffer even further because of the fact that, okay, maybe I have somebody who's here and this is how I can support them with how they're here.
Yeah, and it's one of the things that we don't look at with regards to this, but it's like you mentioned Fred. Fred's a big guy.
Yeah.
He's a really big guy, and he lives on that farm, and so he grew up an Idaho farm boy, and physicality and physical strength and the ability to do things, it has been such a large part of his life, and now he falls walking to go get the mail. Can you imagine how that feels psychologically
Yeah.
to be uh completely dependent upon other people? We always talk about how um first we raise our kids, and then our kids put us to sleep. We end up being as dependent upon kids, and this is assuming there's a child to take care of you, but
Yeah, I'm
not a
screwed.
child, uh,
I'm boned.
there's a
I'm hoping Elliot does well enough, he'll take care of all of us.
but I mean, it's just really really difficult, and uh the vast majority of people who are getting social security payments are getting social security payments because they're retired. So they're of retirement age. And
And they're
that,
not able to work anymore because their body is used up.
yeah, there's and so it's and a lot of times we're like, oh well, um we don't see ourselves in that circumstance, we're like, oh, I'm never going to get Social Security. I'm never going to do this. I'm never going to do that. But the hope, I mean, the whole idea behind the design of the Social Security system is eventually everybody's going to be a customer. You know, there's um and you know when we uh and it's I mean, I can understand, like, it's like, oh, okay, well, we need to do something to make the Social Security system more solvent. Um, or, you know, we need to extend it because it's not going to be able to afford itself at, you know, after 2030 or whatever that is. But that's not what we're seeing. That's not what's happening right now. This is just like random teenagers that play video games all night.
And still feel invincible.
Yeah,
And
and they have like this completely unfettered access. I was looking at when I was getting hang on, I'm trying to move my mouse now. So far the records, the data that's been accessed by Doge is Social Security numbers, medical records, mental health records, driver's license numbers, bank and credit card information, tax information, income and work history, birth and marriage certificates, and home and work addresses. And this is just like we're giving people who have never been vetted, didn't have to take a class to learn, you know, how
And a lot of the specific stuff in the medical records is all protected by HIPAA. And that's the real key thing that I'm bothered by. And for context of anybody who's listening, I used to be a operations manager at a contact center here in Idaho that managed the Affordable Care Act. So I'm one of a few people that I know who's read all 904 pages of the ACA before there was AI, and I just had to read 904 pages because it was my job and I wanted to know what it was. So HIPAA is one of the best things that Clinton did, in my opinion, and it allowed privacy between a patient and their doctor. That's it. And nobody gets to know. If I'm telling you that I'm sick, you can believe me that I'm sick, and you don't need to know the specifics, because why on earth do I need to tell you the specifics? And very specifically, I don't want the government to know what is wrong with me, because I don't want the government to know anything about any of my illnesses, because if they say that this illness makes you disqualified for this, or this illness makes you disqualified for this, or we're going to seek out people that have this type of illness, I don't want them to have that information whatsoever. So HIPAA is a very important law that has been long established. Now, that's me defending HIPAA. I do also understand the concept that if you're going to move from 8 tracks to CDs, at some point you've got to copy the information. And I just don't think that I want that with people who are still feeling invincible. Because man, with the capabilities of that age.
Yeah, and when you listen to the rhetoric that they use about the people that they're dealing with. So the Commerce Secretary, uh he says, "Oh, well, if my the guy's a billionaire. There's a he says if my 94-year-old grandmother um uh, didn't get her Social Security check, or it might have been his mother, um, uh, then then she wouldn't complain. She just think she's going to get it the next month or whatever.
Yeah, or she'd call you.
Exactly. But then he says the only people who complain about that are people who are committing fraud. So the assumption is if somebody calls up and says, "Hey, you haven't paid me what I'm supposed to get paid," then they're just like, "Oh, this guy's trying to cheat the government because he's complaining." And so I started I started thinking about this now. I mean, I always, even with President Biden, who I was very not happy about, but I always give, a president that the traditional first 100 days, because what they said during the campaign is never what they're going to actually do when they get in office. So it's that first 100 days where you're going to see how they're actually doing. But that doesn't apply to
This isn't
Musk.
his first 100 days. It's his second chance at his first 100 days.
And, yeah, but even that. So like President Trump. If I just like look at President Trump, there's not really a whole lot of things that he's advocating for, that he's trying to do, that I really disagree with. Um,
I mean,
there,
I like that Kid Rock came to the White House to, put the fist against Ticketmaster. And that's the thing is there's a lot of like low hanging fruit things that are very agreeable. Um, and I can't growing up in music. Yeah, I don't like Kid Rock, but I 100% agree that that is one of the most predatory industries is ticket resales, and it needed to happen. So yeah, okay, I'm gonna give Kid Rock credit, and I'm gonna give Donald Trump credit, and I'm not happy about that, but it's agreeable.
but Doge and Musk are completely different than President Trump, except for if and I said this, like very early on. I was like, Doge is either going to be the beginning of a completely new way of doing government, and they're going to have a great legacy, or it's going to be the worst um, violence committed against the American people uh, in history. And now I don't even think there's an either or choice. Doge has been a complete and total disaster. Um, and
Well,
like,
and I think Wisconsin's election last night is a perfect example of the people rejecting not only Elon Musk in general, but the fact that he put in $25 million meddling in affairs that he need not ought be in. And this is the argument that I've been trying to have in the shop, talking about the whole Cybertruck thing. Is I wish that I could be excited about the guy because if he was just doing his businesses, cool. You're doing some cool shit. Stop fucking with things that nobody asked you to do.
yeah, and but like if you go to the Doge website, the only thing that the Doge website is an X feed. So everything that Doge posts on um, their under their X handle gets posted on the Doge website. So that's what it is. It's just a series of X posts claiming credit for this. But they're doing it. I mean, I'm making an assumption on intentions. There's if you're a government employee and you know falsify information on a federal website, that's that there's an issue.
Right.
That's an issue of likely fraud that should be investigated. But this is different. Nobody
Because
all
it's
that
just a
they're doing is
feed
they're
from a
posting
social
on
media
X.
account.
They're posting on a social media account, and there's an RSS feed that links that to the government site, but nobody intentionally posted on
Government
a
agency website.
That's exactly right. And the stuff that they're claiming is so there's a there's so what started me thinking about this past week. So I've been watching Doge pretty closely, and it's been frustrating me ever since it began. But this week there was an article in my local newspaper um, about a guy down in Aurora, Colorado, and
Is this the guy who was declared dead?
yeah. So back in late January, he got his Social Security payment for January clawed back. So the government has the ability, if they deposit $5,000 in your account and then they later decide that that was not a proper payment, they can go to your bank and they can claw that entire amount back. So if you had even if you spent part of it, but you had other money in the account, they'll claw the entire. That's why they call it clawback, because there's nothing you can,
They'll
nothing
put
you
you in the
can.
negative.
Yeah. So, uh, so this guy got his January Social Security payment clawed back, and when he contacted his bank, they're like, "Well, the Social Security folks told us you were dead, and that's why we had to take the money back." And they're like, he's like, "Well, you know I'm not dead." And they're like, "Yeah, but there was nothing we could do. They just said that you were dead and they wanted the money back." So it took him a long time. Same exact thing that we were talking about earlier. So he's trying to contact the Social Security Administration by phone, but
Not even remotely easy for capable people.
that's exactly right. So he eventually ends up getting in contact with them, and they say they're going to fix it, but he didn't get his February check, so he missed. So he got his January check clawed back. He didn't get a payment in February. He didn't get a payment in March. So now he's 3 months without um, a Social Security payment. And on March 17th, his bank contacted him and said that the Social Security Administration contacted them again and said that he was dead again. So there, so he had to make an appointment to go see the Social Security people in person, and he couldn't get that appointment until the 9th of April.
All
So
you need to do is go in and be like, "Hey, I'm me."
yeah. So so here's the thing. There but think about it. So it was the end of January when he got his January payment clawed back. Well, President Trump didn't get into office until January 20th. And nobody in the no American member of the public was told that Doge was messing around with their Social Security
No,
records.
they had already gotten into those offices as Trump was getting inaugurated.
Yeah,
This was an article I had read a couple weeks ago. Like they literally had entered in the building. It was like the evening prior to, and they're just saying like, "No, we're doing this." And they kind of strong armed their way in, got everything all set up, and then as Trump was getting inaugurated, they started their operations so that way they could literally start immediately. And then the messaging of what Doge was doing didn't come till like what, like 3 or 4 days later, right?
no, nobody said anything. They weren't talking about some federal records,
Yeah, it wasn't
but
like a big announcement of what it was doing. It wasn't the executive action, but it was talking a little bit about he would be coming into the administration. And I think at that time they were still talking about whether or not are you an actual employee of the government or are you a consultant to the president?
yeah, and it wasn't until the president's address to Congress in March that they said they were accessing Social Security records, and immediately there was all kinds of pushback in the media about it. But these guys literally like got in office, and as soon as they got access to the computers, they started shutting down people's social security accounts without any kind of verification, without any kind of uh, um, and at the same time, they were firing people, and there's and creating all this chaos in the federal government. So I'm like, oh man. So I'm listening to this guy's story, and I'm kind of putting that in my mind against. I think I talked about it one other time before, but I'll just mention it again. I put it in my own mind. I started thinking about the person in Boise who was
Yeah, who was the she had just gotten promoted after she'd been in the federal government, what was it, like 20, 25 years? But because she was new into this promotion and management, she was a probationary employee because she had just gotten promoted.
yeah, so she was 25 years in the army, retired from the army, multiple combat tours, started working for the Veterans Administration right after she retired from the army, and had worked for the Veterans Administration for more than 10 years, was obviously doing her job good because she got selected for promotion and got canned in the by email in the very first few days of the Trump administration. And and see, I don't think I honestly, I mean, it's like I've seen, some behind the scenes footage of like President Trump when he was watching the election results, and he's got an assistant, a woman who kind of like follows him around and posts everything that he wants posted on social media. So he's actually saying it, but he writes on a piece of paper what he wants her to say with a Sharpie, or he just tells her what he wants to say or looks at it or whatever, says, no, change this word or whatever. So President Trump absolutely is the one who's posting, but he's got an assistant who's doing
Yeah,
the
she's the voice.
the data entry kind of a piece of it. But um so I mean, I'm just making an assumption, which maybe I shouldn't, but that kind of gives me a hint that he's not a techie guy. There's
Oh no, because like everything that I've been reading this week is that the whole signal gate has been catching him off guard and that he doesn't understand the technology to begin with.
yeah,
And if you look at any of his business interactions, he's a good old boy. He's the kind of guy who does handshake agreements on the golf course, and he wants to be face to face because he wants to be able to impress his power on you, and it's a very old school way of doing things. But as far as technologically savvy, no. And even all of his crypto stuff is because of Barron and Don Jr.
you're right.
uh, yeah, it has nothing to do with him being savvy. It's his family has a bunch of different generations that get things that he doesn't.
So, so and you really can't blame him because I mean, here's this like absolute genius with regard to programming and engineering, who's telling him all this stuff. But what Musk is saying is all bullshit. There's so like there's he talks about fraud in the Social Security system. And, fraud's been a problem in the Social Security system for a very long time. And it is a sizable problem. There's like $100 million worth of fraud that they find and attempt prosecutions on every year. But that's like 7/100ths of a percent. So not 7%, not 7/100ths, 7/100ths of 1% of the of Social Security payments are fraudulent, and then there's like another 70 million or so that are considered improper payments. But an improper payment certainly could be an overpayment, but it's also an underpayment. So if they underpay somebody by $150 and have to issue a second check or whatever, that's included in that $70 million. But even that's like 10/100ths of 1%. So it's just it's not. But Musk is getting on board and he's saying, there's this massive amount of fraud, and it's just he shows no evidence. There's nothing anywhere that's indicating that what they're saying is true. He got on X and said that less than 10% of federal employees were going to work. They were all working from home. 40% of federal employees have to go to work because
Yeah.
they're a transportation security officer and they got to go to the airport. They're an agriculture inspector. They got to go to the
Used to be
slaughterhouse. They're
Forest
a
Service workers.
yeah. So they're a CBP officer that's got to go to the border station. So there's the not the majority, but a big chunk, 40% of people can't do any of their work. None of their work at all can be done any place except for at their duty station. And then for the people who are eligible, 40% of the hours that were billed for people who are eligible for telework agreements were billed in the office. So 40% of the people who are eligible for telework are also working in the in the office. And the uh and every single one of them um had to have a telework agreement that was signed by their supervisor. So um uh so it's like it's not like these people are just sitting at home and that's how they're being permitted. It's like, oh, these people are just sitting at home and they're not actually working. They're just lazy people who don't want to get a real job or whatever. And this is the kind of rhetoric that Musk is selling via his X platform, which is just completely untrue. It's totally untrue. It's disrespectful to the people who work hard uh, to um, to uh, to do all the things that we just talked about. I mean, it's somebody who is working at a social security office all day, every day. They're sitting there looking at a lobby filled with people in wheelchairs and with walkers,
Yep.
and yeah, they're trying their best to figure out, oh, okay, you know, because they've got to have a verification of everybody's disability. So what records do I need to have? So you're sitting there looking at this guy who's in a wheelchair, and you have to get some kind of verification that they're disabled when they're obviously disabled. They're sitting there right in front of you. So anyway, there's and
I think that
the
his kind of the rhetoric around all of this is really doing the disservice to the vast majority of people that are actually working remotely in the way that it is supposed to be. And I think that, I can attest that there are some of my clients that come into my shop that absolutely tell me, yeah, in between meetings, I'll play my Switch. And it's like, would I do that? Probably not. Like that's not my work ethic, but I also need to be in front of people. I need to be in the office, and I understand when people need to be in the office. So are there those people? Absolutely. But then I see Haley, and she works remote. She works on the other side of this wall. And there are days that she's supposed to get off at 6 and she's not done until 7:15, 7:30 because of the amount of workload that she has. And to say that people who work from home are lazy is just such a short-sighted statement. And it's kind of like saying, I hate all Christians because the people at Westboro Baptist are fucking assholes. It's like you can't look at this and expect everyone to be that exact same thing. And you certainly can't spew this message that everybody is that minority.
Yeah, and there's one of the things that, and I just remember this because I was a Fed, right? So I worked for the federal government, not as a, so after I retired from the military, I worked for the federal government for 10 years, and during that time, there was a significant initiative to get people to get offices to allow telework to because things like the when we had the H1N1 scare uh, or uh, there's when there's severe weather events and people can't go into work, when you have people who are able to work away from their office, then the government doesn't shut
Practical
down.
reasons on why that can be a good thing.
Yeah, so it's COGO, Continental Continuation of Government Operations, COGO. Sorry for the dog. The
Oh, that's yours. I legitimately was like, "Is that Tesla?"
there's uh
I'm excited.
so the obviously somebody went into the hallway, and you go ahead and talk, and I'm gonna mute my microphone.
Well, here's what we'll do. This is a perfect segue because we're just gonna keep talking shit about Elon Musk, and I can do that for hours anyways, and I have been doing it because people have been making fun of me. I could not believe the amount of like distasteful comments I got from my followers just by posting a picture. So last week I talked about doing the test drive of the Cybertruck. And if anyone follows any of my social media, like it's very apparent that I hate Elon Musk. I'm not a fan of this guy whatsoever, and I am celebrating his potential downfall right now. I'm really, really, really enjoying watching it from afar and not encouraging people to partake in those shenanigans. Um, so there was, oh man, I just had something. My train derailed. Ah, I hate when this happens. Like you just have an idea where you're going somewhere. Oh, okay. Here's where my train of thought came back on. Um, so I went Wednesday, literally right before we had recorded. Came from test driving to recording, but I specifically waited to post a picture because on Saturday there was a protest at the dealership. And I intentionally was trying to troll some of my followers. So I posted the picture of the Cybertruck with just really vague statement that says, "How many of you are upset with the decision that I made on Wednesday?" Implying I bought it, but really just like the decision to go test drive a car. And like Danny from National Product, he was like stoked because he thought, oh, I had gotten into something that indicates that I am at another level of success. And that was really cool. There were a lot of people that were excited because they were thinking that I was excited about something. And the amount of comments that I got calling me little dick or like the things in my direct messages that were just super rude. It's like, that's hilarious that you guys can't see the nuance. That all I did was take this one picture of something and you didn't look at any of the context surrounding it whatsoever. That I hate the guy and I'm really not a fan of what's going on. But I will post this one thing in the midst of all of that and then just get a bunch of unfollows and vitriol aimed at me. I think it's funny. But at the end of the day, I am thinking that it's just a very, very, very indicative sign of how angry people are. Is it's creating a tunnel vision, and I'm kind of excited with the focus that that tunnel vision creates because I do think that it's putting a lot of pressure on him. And again, Wisconsin is a good indication of that. But oh man, tunnel vision is not a good look for the left.
Yeah, there's and there. I mean, I've generally had respect uh for Musk. I thought his whole, walking into Twitter, let that sink in, and then the way that he did the layoffs at Twitter, I thought that was kind of um childish and mean. Um and but it's like, okay, whatever, it's a tech company, and maybe and you can't argue, well, you can argue, but it's not a reasonable argument, that the Twitter, prior to Musk buying it and changing it over to X, was not, just this government propaganda machine. um and uh and
But how is that not the exact same thing, but just on the opposite side now?
Yeah, it absolutely is. And this is where I think that, I mean, we're getting towards the end of, maybe we are at the end of President Trump's 100 days. And last week we talked about that. the Signalgate thing, right?
Yeah.
And I thought that there were a few people on that obviously um, the National Security Advisor Walls. I thought he messed up by putting that reporter on there, and I thought that uh, that SecDef Hegseth, uh, just like for not being on a secure platform, um, the way that he talked about European allies and the fairly detailed information he gave about a future military operation. Um, I thought that was poor judgment, very very poor judgment. Um, but he was relying on Signal. I didn't. So, but anyway, so I kind of gave him the benefit of the doubt. But then there was another report, and this was kind of a maybe it's a little just political thing. Um, he apparently invites his wife to meetings.
Who's
So
he?
like there'll be meetings with allies, and he's got his
Hegseth?
wife. Yeah, yeah. So and uh and and it just kind of struck me as funny because maybe I mean I kind of understand that. So like if you don't have a whole lot of people in your circle that you trust, then you're going to want to have somebody that you can get their opinion from, that you trust, that you have confidence. So I to a certain extent I understand it, but I just
Does she have
remember back.
clearance to provide that trust?
Yeah, but like when Biden had a cabinet secretary meeting, he hadn't had a cabinet meeting in like months, and finally has a cabinet meeting, and he hardly says anything, but his wife is in the cabinet meeting, and she more or less was running that cabinet meeting for President Biden, and everybody went justifiably bonkers that the president was so incapable of running a meeting that he had his wife come along to run the meeting for him. That was the narrative. So
Did his
I
snacks and nap time?
but check this out. So I just started looking at Hegseth a little bit more, and his little brother, his younger brother, um, got hired by the Department of Homeland Security as a senior advisor uh, to the Homeland Security Secretary.
Is this
But
after inauguration or after Hegseth was confirmed?
after he was confirmed,
That's
so he
convenient
gets
timing.
very convenient timing, and then not only is he hired as a senior advisor, and you got to think about this because okay, it's like maybe the person is very very qualified, and it's a good thing to put him in there. But his past, the only thing he's done is manage social media accounts for mid-level organizations, and like when Hegseth was running,
Putting me in that position.
yeah, there's well,
I am not qualified for that at all.
but again, this is Hegseth's little brother. So he hasn't even been alive really that long, and
Hegseth
so
is
he's run
44,
social
right?
media accounts. Say again?
Hegseth is 44, right?
Yeah, I think he is. Yep.
Okay.
And uh, but anyway, so he's completely. There's no way that anybody can argue at all that he credibly that he is qualified to be the senior advisor to the Secretary of Homeland Security for uh, operations at the southern border, right? But then he gets detailed to the Defense Department and has an office in the E ring, which is where all the bigwigs sit in the Pentagon. So right down the hallway from his brother. So the only reason he was hired by Homeland Security was because nepotism regulations would prevent him from getting hired at the Defense Department. So in order to get past the nepotism regulations, they had him hired by Homeland Security and then detailed to the Defense Department so that he can. And he's like when Hegseth was on his trip to the Pacific region. I think he may still be out there, but his brother's like on the plane with him,
You
and
know, there's a certain amount of uh respect to the amount of ingenuity. Like, you're a pretty creative guy to come up with that kind of solution.
but at the same time, they're firing people left and right because they're claiming that these people aren't able to do their job and they should have never been hired in the first place, and so on
Yeah,
and so
they're
forth.
not family.
So yeah. Anyway, there's so I there there's just so many shenanigans that are taking place. Um, and I this is my concern. There's the last time Trump was president, uh the 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 things that went wrong in his administration were because of the people he hired. He hired bad people, and he put those bad people into very very significant positions, and uh, and he didn't realize that he couldn't trust them until they were already in the betraying him actively. And I think the same thing's going on. I think um uh, there's I'm not. I mean, I could go. I could transition from Musk and start talking about RFK Jr. and what he's
Oh,
doing.
who
Oh,
thinks that vaccines for the avian flu is a terrible thing and that we should just let avian flu run rampant for the entire avian population in America? That's a great idea.
and like literally, he's like, oh, we're going to get back to the gold standard for science, and all the scientists from his agencies are taking the early out. They're the ones who are
Yeah.
like, I'm out of here. I'm
Feel like the
gone.
writing is on the wall. I do not want anything to do with this.
There's so
So
I
like
there
I don't mean to cut you off there, but this is like I have such a morbid sense of humor that I'm like, this is what I was worried about, and I'm watching it, and all I can do is just sit here and laugh because I voted for Cobra Commander. And I could not vote for the other lady. But at the same time, this wasn't a good choice.
Yeah, I'm there's and I mean I'm on President Trump's side. I want him to succeed. I want the initiatives that he's trying to, implement to succeed. But but
Credit. And this is where I really do think this is where he can rally. He knows how to fire people. He knows how to, if somebody's not doing their job properly, he's made an entire brand out of getting people out of the office that they shouldn't be in. He needs to start recognizing that. And if he recognizes that, then we can circle back to all the stuff that we were talking about at the beginning of this conversation, which is a lot of agreeable things that he's doing.
yeah, there and um so it's the whole thing is uh to me, the biggest mistake that that President Trump has made is Elon Musk, and putting his faith in Elon Musk, because there's and it's already, there's the chair of the House and Senate Armed Services Committees wrote a letter and published it in a paper, um, uh, saying that, hey, that what they were hearing through the government scuttlebutt is that that SecDef Hegseth is planning on on some major concessions with regard to our force structure around the globe and things that we do with allies and so on and so forth. And they're like, you need to understand that we have something to say when it comes um, to the American defense posture around the globe, and it's so and that's a little bit of a crack, right? So those are the two. That's the Republican head of the House Armed Services Committee and the Republican head of the Senate Armed Service Committee writing a letter saying what you're hoping to do, we're not going to stand for this. It's not
That's the
it's
thing is
not going to
it's
happen.
you
And I
can't
think
just
it's
move
it's
around the
just about
pieces every couple of years. If you're really talking about a military strategic setup, you are talking about decades upon decades of, okay, we need to worry about this region, but if we pull out in this, other people could be coming in here. It's all about having those strategic alliances all throughout the world, so that way your hands are in every single pie. So no pie starts getting bigger than what you can handle on its own. If we were to pull out, and like, I don't understand the military, and I get this. You can't just say we're going to be complete isolationists because if we have everything at home, then we can defend our home. It's more complex than that.
yeah, and there's and I'm I just think that particularly on the hirings and firings and the level of access to Doge has been so so I got to say this one other thing on Musk, and then I got to tell you about my Jägermeister story. Um,
Is
the
this the NA story that I interrupted you with?
yeah
Okay.
the but so Musk just this past week announced that um, his AI company that he owns
Is
purchased.
consuming his social media company that he owned.
Yeah, so now X is a subsidiary company to XAI.
So
So
it's going to be
XAI,
XAIXX. So it's just going to
yeah,
be another one of his kids.
there's it could be. There's but so the guy who owns an AI company. So what AI companies need more than anything else is data.
Uh-huh.
Is has access to every government database that exists. We're just giving the guy access. And 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 there's been lots of reporting on not only do they have access to it, but they've downloaded it. And it's reasonable to say, okay, well, we needed to preserve the data in case uh, in case something went wrong, right? So they've got an excuse for having loaded all that data. But what what safeguards have we put in place to make sure that he's not a kid with his hand in the candy in the cookie jar? There's
'Cause he also has all the HIPAA information. He has all the social security information, and now he has all of people's tweets. Oh, I'm sorry, posts. And what if we connected these dots? What if we did this thing that I'm trying to do with this platform where it is everything that you need all in one, and it can be your healthcare and your money and your banking and your Amazon and your communication with everybody. And what if I could just be able to make it all encompassing, all in like it's really, really apparent if you start looking at it.
And we talked in a couple episodes. We've talked about conspiracy theories in the government, and I and when it comes to government operations, I'm like that it is very difficult to keep uh things secret in the government, particularly if it's the government doing something wrong. Um, just because there's lots of people who are true patriots that work for the government, and if they see that stuff, they're going to blow the whistle on it. But but uh, you, a corporation, there's and a corporation that is one run by Musk. So I mean, he's got his fingers in tunneling and putting wafers inside people's brains and building rockets and robots and cars and now he wants to build this AI company and he has demonstrated a lack of uh, respect for the law literally since he left South Africa. You know, he left South Africa, wanted to come to the United States. We wouldn't take him because he was dodging the draft in South Africa. The only reason he wanted to leave South Africa is because he reached the age of compulsory military service. So he was going to have to do 2 years in the South African army. So he didn't want to do that. So he tried to come to the United States. We wouldn't take him. So he went to Canada because his mom had a dual citizenship. Was in Canada, went to school for free for 2 years in Canada, um, and then got a student visa to come to the U.S. When he came to the U.S., he was going to school using student loans. So here's a foreign national coming to the U.S. getting education loans subsidized by the federal government, all at this, all why while he's running this racket where he's using their fraternity house as an unlawful bar, basically. So every weekend they would sell tickets to parties at this frat house, and they'd serve alcohol at the frat house, and it was a way of getting past the laws of Pennsylvania with regard to selling alcohol. So, so, so that's why people say he was an illegal immigrant, because he was violating the laws of the state of Pennsylvania while he was going to university on a student visa, getting student loans from the U.S.
And he was here after we'd already denied him.
Yeah. So it's so anyway. And so like here in Boulder, uh, Twitter had an office. So Twitter had just signed a 10-year lease deal for a building here in Boulder, and they when they got the building, they wanted to make it. They wanted to brand it by Twitter. So if you go inside the building, it's like a Twitterplex, right? It's got the blue bird everywhere, and so they took this facility that they were leasing, and they made it so that nobody else would be able to use it except for Twitter, because they made all these modifications to it. And then when he bought Twitter, he just quit paying the lease, just plain paying it, and said they're still in court. Because it's in my local news. They're still in court because they can't get him to either pay the lease payments that he's now years behind on, or to uh, to redo the place and put the place back the way it was when they first signed the lease. So he's got no respect for legal obligations, no respect. It's not like he's like, oh well, we signed a contract, so we at least got to make it right by these people. The guy is he is a completely amoral um, globalist who cares about nothing but the final score on the scoreboard, which is, we got to remember, he's the richest person in the world.
Well,
And
and that's one of the things that I think that he really um doesn't underestimate about Americans. And it's unfortunate that there are, most of the people in my circle, most of the people that I talk to, the things that we're interested is world politics. But the vast majority of people that I talk to on a regular basis, if I'm just making mention of anything, they don't pay attention to the news. It's all bad news. It's all depressing. Why would I pay attention to that? And the idea of paying attention to world news, I think Elon Musk recognizes that most people aren't looking at the entire game. And if he's paying attention to the entire game, he can manipulate as many people with having a little bit more information. And this is the big thing about that book by Yuval Noah Harari, Nexus. And it just talks about information and how information is what can be weaponized against people. If you know more than somebody else, they will be subjective to you 100% of the times.
there's I asked my my AI uh when I was talking about all the stuff that Doge is doing. I'm dialoguing with my AI, and so I was asking about Musk's claims that there was widespread fraud in the Social Security program. So I'm like, okay, well, what is fraud? What's the definition of fraud? So it tells me what the definition of fraud is. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. That's what he's doing. So then I asked the AI, I'm like, hey, could the statements that are being made by Musk and Doge be considered, would they be sufficient to warrant an investigation into potential fraud? And it didn't, it took like maybe 30 seconds. It's like, yes. And then it goes, the key elements are intentional deception, material misrepresentation, unfair advantage or harm. And then it gives the potential indicators of fraudulent behavior. So there's
Clearly, your AI is legacy media. So, so it's got a
but
bias. It's not Grok. It's fake news.
well, see, so you use ChatGPT,
Mhm.
and ChatGPT is one of the engines that Perplexity uses. That's what I use. There's and just look at the way that Musk treats Sam Altman.
I personally invest in companies that Sam Altman invests in, and it is not because I think he's a good person. It is because I think that he is smarter than I am and is seeing the future in a way that I don't. And that is a threat to another person who sees the way that things are going to be.
That's
Um,
exactly right.
and I think that the whole him being I was actually this is one of the shower thoughts that I had earlier this week, and I don't know why, because I've been talking about AI for weeks in the shop. And one of the things that Elon is really upset about with Sam Altman is the whole name Open AI and his claim that, we started this as this open source nonprofit thing, and then they moved to be a for-profit model. And how can you be open if you're a for-profit model? Which, fuck you, Twitter's a for-profit model and you're using Grok. You're doing the exact same thing. So your pot and kettle situation here is not really helpful. And two, this is one of the things as a business owner that I've had to think of is like, how could I actually scale things up? And the way that I currently do business, I can't scale things up. I would have to completely change what it is that I'm doing. I would have to go from a lease setup to a commission setup, and then I would be able to scale things so much. And with some of the future ventures that I'm trying to get into, I've been really thinking of how can I make a nonprofit profitable to a certain extent, knowing that there's expenditures that have to go in very specific manners. And I was trying to figure out this solution, and I realized, oh, you don't make it nonprofit. You just make it for profit, and then you offer things for free, which is the core essential of what you're trying to do with a nonprofit is provide a capability to the masses of people and create a benefit for people. But then you need to figure out a profit margin. And I pay $20 a month for ChatGPT because I use it all the time. I get the value out of that $20 because I'm using more than just a Studio Ghibli filter on some of my pictures. Um, but I'm pretty sure that all the people that just signed up for the $20 a month subscription, when it goes to renew in the next 4 weeks, they're going to be like, oh, I don't use this that much. I like the little bits that I can get. And that's the open source concept going to the masses. Not everybody needs the full power and the full capabilities because not everybody wants it. And certainly not everybody's going to use it to the capabilities of what it should be used for. But if you want to push it, there's some people that want that and they're willing to pay for it. So help them fund it.
Yeah, and Altman was talking about when they dropped the 4.0 uh
Image creation stuff. It's
yeah,
powerful. It is
yeah.
so powerful. It's cool.
And there's a, so he posts on X. He's like, "Man, we thought it was gonna be popular, but we didn't know it was gonna be this popular." So
Yeah.
they're having to scale up. But even when he's talking about scaling it up for their paying customers, he's like, "We're gonna, our goal is to make it so that free users can get 3 images per month." Which again, you're just like you're talking about. It's like, oh, okay, well, I mean, I want to make a really cool profile picture of myself for my social media. I want to make a really cool picture of my dog, um, and that's the free level of
Yeah.
GPT. That's exactly what it's for. Same thing in
But
Perplexity, the free level. That's perfect. But I'm the same way. I pay for it because I need to be able to upload 25 PDF files and say, "Hey, I'm doing a paper on this. Tell me which one of these papers are worth reading."
the JFK files was the perfect example of it.
Yeah.
Went through tens of thousands of pages. So like there's the legitimate use. And the night that it went viral, I had timeout request after timeout request after timeout request. And I'm used to just getting responses every couple of seconds. And I'm still having problems. Like the whole project that I've been working on, I'm making a tarot deck, and this is so much fun. I am just like, okay, let's start with the major arcana. Let's go one card at a time. Okay, tell me this card. Tell me the meaning and the symbolism in this card. Okay, I want this kind of scenario, and this is the visuals that I want it to be, and this is the art style that I want it to be. Okay, do this. Okay, now I want you to change this around. And I'm doing this for every single card. So I love the capabilities that are out there now because if you're being really creative, I could never have done this on my own. I have no artistic capabilities, and I don't have the money to hire a graphic designer to make something like this exist. But now I have that empowerment, and that's the thing that I really think AI can be for people is a very empowering thing. Um, Go ahead.
So I'm gonna tell my Jägermeister story
Yeah.
because it deals with their logo. So I was walking to the package store this morning to buy some athletic beers. Because that's the kind of beer that I drink. Athletic. It's non-alcoholic beer. They're great.
I
Um,
have a Weihenstephaner, 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 which is a Belgian imported non-alcoholic that I found at our co-op that I was really excited about because I haven't tried that one.
I drink these athletic. Uh,
No,
they're delicious.
Athletic is good. They're a great company. I need more variety.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, I was going to the package store to get a case of beer, and as I was walking to the package store, there's a big advertisement on the wall on the outside of it for Jägermeister. And I saw it, and I just started thinking, memories of Jägermeister started going around in my mind. So I crossed the street and I'm walking past it and I'm looking at this advertisement, and I noticed, and in the advertisement is a big bottle of Jägermeister, and I had never noticed this before because on the bottle of Jägermeister, there's a buck deer, right?
Yeah, with
And it's kind of
the cross coming in through the antlers.
okay. So the cross piece is the thing that I hadn't seen before.
Yeah, so it
So
was a vision of the hunter. Like the story of Jägermeister is actually a really, really interesting one. You tell your story. I'm gonna look this up really quick.
so I look at it, and coming out of this buck is these radiating lights. So there's this light that's emanating from this buck, and at the top of the lights, or in the center of it, is this presumably Christian cross. And I'm like, man, how did I never realize that? And in Jägermeister, I saw the deer all the time, but I never noticed this radiant light and the cross. But then I started thinking, and I was like, well, wait a minute, Jägermeister. This is the Mushroom Master. There's a Jaeger. It's like a Jaeger schnitzel is a breaded pork
Yeah.
cutlet with
Uh-huh.
mushroom sauce. So I'm like, this has to be like the result of some psychedelic experience that the Mushroom Master had dealing with a deer and some religious, epiphany of some kind.
So I just asked ChatGPT, and I said, "Can you tell me the lore of the Jägermeister logo?" Ah, yes, the Jägermeister logo, the glorious emblem of a glowing cross between the antlers of a proud stag. It's not just a random edgy design cooked up to look good on a shot glass. It's actually packed with lore. Here's the story behind it. The legend behind the logo. The Jägermeister logo is inspired by the legend of Saint Hubertus, the patron saint of hunters. The story: St. Hubertus was a nobleman and avid hunter in 7th century Belgium. According to legend, on Good Friday while hunting in the forest, he encountered a majestic stag with a glowing crucifix floating between its antlers. The moment was so profound it stopped him in his tracks. A divine voice told him to turn away from his life of excess and devote himself to God. He listened, giving up on his noble title, becoming a monk, and later the Bishop of Liege. St. Hubertus became a symbol of spiritual awakening and reverence for nature. So, yeah, total mushroom trip. 100%.
And that's so.
Can confirm.
And I can't tell you how many shots of Jägermeister I've done in my life. I mean,
Oh,
I never noticed it. When we were in Germany, I used to laugh because, the little bottles of liquor that,
yeah.
uh, well, you would see, you know, Germans would be working, and they would bring like five of those things with them in their pocket, and they'd take out a little bottle of Jägermeister, and they'd be drinking shots of Jägermeister on their lunch break or whatever. And so yeah, I have always been a connoisseur of Jägermeister, and some people don't like it, but I have done a lot of shots of Jägermeister in my life, and I never noticed the the cross in between
Yeah.
the antlers of the stag. I never. But when I saw that, I was like, and then it clicked to me. I'm like, Mushroom Master. Well, why would you name a liquor Mushroom Master unless you were tripping on mushrooms?
It's a fun story. I certainly enjoy the iconography that's associated with it. I love anise and I love black licorice. Like that is just one of my favorite flavors. And there's this place when you get on the other side of Idaho Falls and you're first getting into Wyoming that is home of the square ice cream cone. And it's they have this scoop that just makes a square, and they have a black licorice ice cream that's really, 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 really good. And one of the things that I did in my early 20s, a regular drink for me was a shot of Jaeger and almond milk. And that might sound disgusting to a bunch of people, but it was just a really creamy licorice drink at the end of the day that was basically like licorice ice cream. And I would drink these all the time. And I don't know if you remember the first Italian Greyhound that I had, Jasper. So Jasper's a puppy, and I was drinking one of these, and I go back into the bedroom in our apartment, and I come back out, and Jasper has jumped on top of the table and has drank this entire glass of milk and Jägermeister. And I'm just like, no, that's like the most disgusting thing for you to do.
There's
Um,
a
uh, I think now that we're talking about drinking being more lively would be a good time to have table talk conversations, table
I
topic
agree.
for family dinner. So left hand or right hand?
Uh, Left hand.
Left hand. Okay. If you could be the smartest person in any subject, which would you choose?
In any subject.
Smartest
Uh,
person in the world in any subject.
yeah. So actually, I started to think, but then I'm like, well, you really don't need to think about this that much. So, I've said this before. I'm in seminary, and the reason I'm studying theology, right? So I'm getting a master's of divinity, but the specific, specialty of my divinity degree is in pastoral counseling, and the reason for that is my actual interest, academic interest, is in developmental psychology, uh, and to get more specific, developmental psychology, how identities are formed. Um, so if I could be the smartest person in the world on anything, it would be developmental psychology and the formation of identities in the human person.
That's a very, very specific answer.
I know, but it's one of those things. It's like when that's your thing. So like it's like I spend so much time doing research, but I'm always trying to figure out how can I incorporate that into my research. So
Hey,
I'll be it's like I'm doing a research paper on uh the parable of the prodigal son. Um so uh there's it's a biblical story. Prodigal son, kid goes to his dad, says, "Hey, give me my inheritance because I want to go party." He goes off and goes party, and then he has this crisis, um, where he realizes that he has betrayed himself. So he goes back home. Anyway, that's the story, right? So so to me, I'm like, well, that's a great opportunity to talk about identity formation and there, because there's three people. There's the father, there's the older son, and there's the younger son, and each of them have very 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 specific personalities. And so so anyway, that's what I do. I'm always trying to figure out how can I cram identity formation and developmental psychology into the academic work that I'm doing.
I if I were to really think about the one thing that I have the most passion on giving, I love helping up and coming entrepreneurs actually be able to get their dreams to fruition. And it's one of the things that it's like this open offer that I have with any of the people that come into the barber shop, because a lot of young people get into businesses. And it's like, hey, I've got a world of experience, in not only just like in this barber shop, owning a business, doing marketing, managing people, but I've also had this prior career where I was in human resources and did staffing analytics. And like, there's a wealth of information that just sits on shelves and never gets used. And I like, going through old memories and things like that. So I really enjoy just seeing other people make realizations that I've already made. This is the whole reason why on Monday we went out to the Boise Barber College and taught a class. It's like,
Yeah,
yeah,
I
I
saw
took
those pictures that you posted.
Yeah, and all so what we did for that was I went I've got a fun story. So when was on last week, I had literally just gotten my hair cut, and this was an experience. So I had gone about 2.5 months ago to the school to get my hair cut because I knew that I was going to start getting into recruiting mode. So I need to get my face out to the schools. The best way of doing that is getting your hair cut. Um, and when I was there a few months ago, I was talking to this guy who used to be my instructor, and I was like, "Hey, I want to teach a class. What would you guys like a class to be taught on? And I'll teach whatever you guys want me to teach on." And he's like, "Well, honestly, whatever you want to. Most people just come in and they do like a haircut example. But if you have a class that you want to teach, you can do whatever. Like the time is yours." All right. Well, like there's a lot of lessons that you guys don't teach and other shops won't give. Are you okay if I do like a marketing and business strategy, how to build a brand and like those kind of basics, which I know a lot of people are trying to figure out and they don't have anyone to tell them because everyone's trying to sell them some $500 course. And he's like, they would love that. So we get there and you have led trainings, you have led classes for large groups of people. So this is me needing to talk for 90 minutes straight to 50 people, and probably only 4 people in the room really care about what it is that I'm saying. And that's 3 people more than the amount of asleep people that are in the room, in the front row, by the way. So we go and it's a fantastic class. I actually had a lot of fun because there were some of those aha moments. And that's been my favorite part of any kind of leadership role that I've ever been in is when people have that moment where it's like, oh, okay, I get it now. And like that light bulb goes off. I love that. So if I could be, the most skilled or the most experienced, most knowledgeable in any ability, it would be getting startups started and understanding the basic concepts and how to apply them to individual businesses. Because I've done that for people that are starting their own law firms. I've done that for people that are building their own podcast. I've done it for people that are just needing some help getting a website built. And all those things are really fun, but I've only ever been able to really do it once or twice for myself. And it's still a lot of fun, even just to share that to other people.
And I thought it was really smart of you to bring the barbers who work in your shop along with you, because your business strategy is really those people are they're running their own businesses inside your shop.
Yeah. Well, and
Yeah,
that was
and
that was honestly a big part of the thing. So I uh I was really, really proud of myself for the way that I set some of this up because I was transitioning one topic to another topic, and there was like twice when somebody asked a question that was a perfect segue into what I was about to start. And I'm like, yes, I did this correct. I made them think about the things that we're about to get into. Um, but I didn't give any introduction whatsoever. I just got there and I was like, okay, everybody stand up, stretch. Cool. We're awake. We're here. We're right now. I need all of you to do one really simple, stupid word association game with me. Okay. We're going to all have the same game. So you all have pen and paper, right? When I say the word, you're going to write down the one word that you associate immediately with it. All right. You ready? The word is barber. Go. Like, obviously, everybody's writing down a handful of different things, and I'm gonna pick on a couple of people to tell me what their word is. So, so I get the first kid, and I could not have asked for a better response on this whatsoever, because I'm like, all right, so what was your word? He's like, hair. I'm like, that's good. That's good. You can associate barbers with hair. That's fantastic. So what your job now is tell me a story about when a barber did something with hair. And he's like, yeah, okay. A barber cuts hair. Cool. Is that the entire story? Well, yeah. Is there supposed to be? No, no. That's the story. That's a good story. That's a great story. Okay, what was your word? Connections. That's a really good word. Tell me a story when barbers had connections. And he goes on to this whole moment. I was like, I'm not gonna make fun of your story, but his story was way better. And it's like, okay, so obviously everybody can associate differently. Everybody realizes that there's a story to be told, and there's a way that you can tell the story all about the same thing. So I'm Chris, I own the Barber Story, and I'm here to help direct you on how to tell your own story. And it became like this segue of marketing, and I'm realizing like, oh, there's this whole thing that I'm doing, and it's the first time that I've actually had a lot of my different components of why I've done the barber story the way that I've done really feel like, oh man, there's a message that I have for somebody else. And the big reason on why I always wanted to do the barber story is I knew I wanted to do something bigger than myself. And without giving too much away from us, like our last name is pretty cool. Like you immediately associate it with excellence because of what it is associated in the industry that it is. And I have done presentations for leadership that when I think of excellence, I literally think of my name, and then I ask my employees if they want to be associated with that. And is that cocky? 100%, but it demonstrates the level of excellence that I expect out of people. And because of that, I could put my name on the side of a building and people would immediately associate because there's already that association with our name. Like we didn't work for it, but I could use it. I could capitalize. But then that's me. And that's just me. It's like, okay, that's my ego and that's me building. But if I want to do something bigger than that, then there's got to be something bigger. So it can't be my name on the side of it. So that's where coming full story with it being called the Barber Story, it's like, okay, well, here's Jim. He literally took the farmer's route in Oregon Trail. And for those of you who don't know, that's the hardest difficulty because you have no money to start out with. And he goes straight into the industry with a lease, which is the hardest thing to do. He's been in the industry now for almost 10 years and he's booked out for 3 months at a time. He's doing a pretty okay on paper. And then this is Lillian. She just came from a commission shop to a commission shop, went from one city to another city to another city, has lost a lot of her clientele, and is having to rebuild for the first time going into a lease. She is established, but rebuilding herself. They're different stories and are different experience. So you guys now you should be able to realize there's a wealth of information in a shop like this that has that kind of diversity. And the story is always bigger than yourself. But uh there I felt so bad because the kind of advice that they're asking me is the kind of advice that I'm not going to tell students. Like, hey, how do you figure out taxes? Well, if you listen to Jim, you're going to hire a CPA. So you should listen to Jim because he hires a CPA. And then you should hear the things that I'm telling you in between the words that I'm not saying. But you should listen to Jim because he hired a CPA.
It's so interesting that in a way, the things that we talked about are kind of connected because, like, I've always said that I haven't always said, but I say frequently that the most complex word in the English language is I, because when a person says I, they know who they are. And so it's like, I like, and these are the things that I like. I am, and these are the things that I am. But that word I is that person's sense of self. And that sense of self is is in the same way that there's not two people that have the same DNA. There's not two people who have the same life experience, right? So even two identical twins have different experiences within the womb.
Well, and even the going back to your prodigal son experience or example, the older son never had a safety net being the older son. He was the first one. He had to experience all the struggles. So when the father is trying to prevent the struggles for his younger son, he's reluctant because he's like, I had to deal with it. Why would you do this? Why would you accept him back in? Because even though you're siblings, I'm never going to know what Brad went through because I'm never going to know what it's like to be an older brother. I'm never going to know what those kind of experiences are from his perspective. So it's two different identities.
Yeah, and it's so that's why I say that very small word "I" is the most complex word because when a person is using that word "I," the one that's listening really doesn't know what they're talking about. They don't. It's like they know that they're talking about themselves, but who are they? And who? And and now nowadays we've gotten uh you know uh the identity has become a big thing, but
Yeah.
it's become a very big shallow thing. So it's like a a tree that's got miles of roots, but they only go down, 2 inches deep into the soil. So, so if a wind comes along, that tree's just going to fall right over because it doesn't have any roots that go down deep. Because people are like, okay, well, my identity is, and they almost always go directly to gender or sexual orientation.
But
Like
there's
that
so much
is
more to your identity and who you are. There's the interests that you have. There's the types of conversations that you have. There's so much different criteria than just the fleshy sack that this is.
yeah.
Um, that's
And
I was gonna go somewhere with this. What were you about to say?
well, it's just it's one of those things that it's it excites so many passions that you never get beyond it. So you go to that one spot and then you're like, "Oh, well, I am XYZ, whatever label you want to put on yourself in that one little area." But that salacious little tidbit of
Yes.
our, sexual formation or
Well, so
gender formation.
it's the low-hanging fruit, and this is exactly what I was actually mentioning in that class. So, when I was talking about why I wanted a brand, branding is something that you have things that you genuinely do believe and you hold as core values that people can associate with because they're going to buy a product that they can believe in because of the values that it's associated with. They're supporting Tom's shoes, not because Tom's shoes are amazing shoes, they're not, but they do provide shoes to people who need shoes in places that can't get footwear. And that's an amazing thing that needs to happen. So if you're supporting Tom's, you're supporting a good cause. And that's what people support more than necessarily the product. So the argument that I was making is how do you want to identify yourself as? Do you want to identify yourself as the low hanging fruit? Because, yeah, barbers cut hair. There's your entire world. It's a huge world, and you can go out to everybody because barbers cut hair. And I'm a white guy, and that's my world. I'm a white guy, and I'm a barber. I cut hair, but that's kind of a overused thing, and you're gonna get lost in the masses. That's not actually your identity. So what you need to find is the thing that differentiates yourself. And I started talking about this other shop in town called the Beardsmith. Beardsmith is fantastic. I'm really good friends with the owner, a lady named Wendy. She's a phenomenal business owner. She's a phenomenal barber, and she does the exact same thing that I do, different. She does it for really doodly Idaho guys, and she focuses on masculinity and like the positive aesthetic parts of masculinity and not any of the cultural aspects of masculinity. And it's a lot of dudes who like to smell like whiskey and like their beards really big, and it's doodly dudes. It's not my thing. I'm having an art gallery. But that's the thing is she has a space to be herself. And because she chose to be herself and do the thing that she wants to do, she found people that supports that idea and she's differentiated herself. I'm the weird barber that talks about the things that you're not supposed to talk about, and I give you extra time in your haircut so we can have the conversation. I'm going to talk to you about religion and politics and all the weird shit that's going in AI and how everyone is going to have their jobs taken away from them, and I will have that conversation directly with them like none of their friends will have with them. That's my niche. And if you want to come to the barbershop that I run, you will have a lot of really cool opportunity for some weird conversations. And that's how we differentiate ourselves. And you just lean into be unapologetic about who you are. And that is your identity. People who like you will find you, but that's your identity.
Yeah, I think you know, it's interesting that you know, in that there's uh when you were like, okay, well, what would you like to know more about then? You know, if you could know more than anybody else, what topic would it be? There's y- uh, you know, I go straight to this passion that I have that drives how I learn. And it's not just why I learn. The reason I want to know about identity formation is because, uh, uh, you know, it's the whole pastoral counseling piece of it. If I can help people to, understand who they are, then they'll live much more satisfying lives than they will if they stop at I'm a white guy who likes women or whatever. You know, there's
I never defined it that way.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
You're
yeah.
making assumptions, mister.
There's
What, just because I'm married to my wife?
yeah, exactly. But but the you know the things that make people really interesting, and the things that motivate people to be uh to pursue excellence, um are so much it's so much more than those 2-inch deep identity, you know, the low hanging fruit that you're talking about. It's like, oh, okay, well, I know that I am this, and it's always, you know, race, gender, sexual orientation, um, uh, maybe religion, right? So, like, I identify as a Christian, so my entire world is going to be about being a Christian.
Yeah, you
That's
live in Jesus land because you're Christian.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's that's not a very interesting place to be.
it's
Yeah.
not. And you wind up getting lost in that space with people that only exist in that space, and then you get sick of being in that space.
Yeah, and it's so funny. I was thinking about it this week because I was researching um the connection between faith and reason, right? So you know, you believe in something just out of faith, or you believe in something because there's some logical explanation for what you believe. And in that world, there are uh, three dominant views historically. There's there's a Thomistic view that that uh, reason leads to faith. So the so you have to have an explanation for something
You
before
had
you
an
believe it.
experience that created faith.
Yeah. And then there's another view called the Augustinian view where faith leads to reason. And in actuality, it's your faith in something that gives you the confidence to kind of ask questions about it. So you begin with believing that something exists, and then because you believe it exists, you explore it further. So
What's the
faith,
duality of being able to have both at the same time? Because I have faith that something is out there, but I kind of need to have some reason and rationality around it, even though I can exist with a little bit of both.
yeah, well, it just depends. So I like to view it as being like two sides of a river. And on one bank of the river is faith, and on the other side is reason. And then there's a bridge between the two. Um, but but the side that you start out on uh, kind of uh, names your approach to life. It's like, oh, okay, well, I believe something. I believe this person loves me, and because I believe this person loves me, now I can be like, oh, okay, well, what are the ways that they show me that they love me? What are the um, what are the evidences that I see of that love? But
So the
even if I
waters would
don't,
be understanding.
yeah, but the other side is, well, I don't know if this person loves me or not. I have no idea if the person loves me. So until I see some kind of evidence that they love me, I'm not crossing the bridge. I'm not going over to believing that the person loves me until 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 I see some kind of evidence. So that's the thing. But then there's this other view called the Tertullian view, and the Tertullian view is um, is that there's no connection between the two, so the bridge doesn't exist. If you have faith, because you have faith, you therefore do not have reason, and if you have reason, because you have reason, therefore you do not have faith. And this is really where we saw this argument a lot was, right around 2000 at the pinnacle of the new atheist movement,
Okay.
where people where it's like, oh, okay, well, once you get reason in your mind, once you start looking at the world logically and you're seeing things as everything's material and my mind is just, synapses that are taking place inside my brain, and they're so so you might want to say that you have belief, but the only reason you have belief is because your brain is firing in a particular way, and the reason takes over. So if you have and Neil deGrasse Tyson is very much this way, but it's like there's if you have faith in something, it's because you're you're silly and you're not smart enough to grasp the realities of the universe. Because once you grasp the realities of the universe, then faith doesn't make sense. So that's a Tertullian view. But here's the interesting thing that I was thinking about this week. Those three views, which are widely held in lots of different philosophical disciplines, they were all developed by three different Catholic dudes. Uh, and that's one of the reasons why I'm so fascinated by Catholicism, is because the depth of thought that it takes to come up with each of those exists within Catholic theological thought, and uh, there's a diversity of thought that encompasses all three of those.
Okay.
So it's not like, oh, well, all Catholics believe that faith comes before reason. So all Catholics hold a Thomistic view
So let
or
me
an
let me pose that.
Augustinian view.
I How would you view what it is that I have? Because I genuinely do believe that there is a space that we will occupy after this space. I have no idea what that looks like, but I do have faith that I'll find out. And because of my faith in that, that does dictate some of the ways that I live my life. I do have a certain sense of ethics and morality that some could associate aligns close-ish to Christianity. And that is because of this great mystery for me. And I have faith in that. But the problem with the reasoning side of things is I think it's reasonable to say that humans don't know shit about things that are bigger than us. And because there's no reasonable explanation of which one is correct, I can't reasonably associate myself with any one because the faith is more important. But if something could provide me reason, I would take the reason. So would that be that I have faith before reason, or I am reasoning the fact that people can't be trusted?
There's, I would describe that in a completely different way, but in a way that's called diagonalization.
And
So,
so are you going to be the fourth Catholic to come up with a new idea?
no, this is what diagonalization is it's just a recognition that the extremes of two positions are rarely the truth. So, 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 and if you read, Thomas Aquinas is the author of the Thomistic view. Augustine of Hippo is the author of the Augustinian view. And if you read all of what they talk about, what I just did was a very simplistic explanation of a very small portion of their thought, and each of them, if they were in the room with me, would probably say, well, yeah, that is kind of true, but I also believe this, and I also believe that. And because nobody, you can't, it's hard to just pin somebody down and say, well, this is exactly what they believe.
Oh,
So
you
that's
mean
the
you're
idea
saying
of
you can't have their entire identity in one sentence? Hmm.
yeah. So you know, those two absolutes don't necessarily, so maybe your view on those two things is not okay, it's all faith and all reason. Well, it's kind of some faith and it's kind of some reason. So rather than going straight across between the two absolutes, where you what you're doing is you're finding a
Okay.
diagonal between those two philosophical views. So, and within the disciplines of philosophy, that's diagonalization, where you're not taking the extremes of one view or the extremes of another view and saying that those are the absolute truths. You're realizing that each of those expressions of truth exists on a continuum.
Okay. That makes more sense to me because yeah, like I understand faith and I can experience faith. But if something gets put in front of me that makes more sense, I can put faith on a back burner very quickly and just say like, okay, I can navigate this. That's where I think the like the idea of the river and the water being the understanding. I think that just you understand that there needs to be both, so that's navigating the waters back and forth, and I can kind of understand that more than there being a bridge, because it's not necessarily you're not staying dry in this process. You're getting wet crossing the river, and you getting wet is your understanding. So you're going to gain understanding going from faith to reasoning, and you're going to gain understanding reasoning to faith. But you can't jump from one side to the other without at least immersing yourself in those waters, right?
Yeah, and and in particularly in debate, it's helpful to to recognize the continuum of your opponent during a debate, because if you can and to recognize your own continuum, that your position that you're debating isn't the absolute truth. It's just the view that you're choosing to
Perspective,
debate.
yeah.
So if you can take your opponent and diagonalize them towards your position, So you're not telling them that, oh, well, you've got to take from your view, you've got to boom, come up here so that you're right straight across from me and we're on the same thing so you can build a straight bridge. But if you can take that person and say, well, oh, okay, I don't believe exactly what you're saying, but I do kind of believe a little bit of what you're saying. Now that person's closer to you, and you can incrementally take the audience, because that's how you win in a debate, is changing the audience's opinion. You can change it because you get the audience to recognize that the person you're debating doesn't really believe what they're saying. They believe kind of a little something different.
Okay. See, and I'm looking at it more as I remember when I was doing those Wednesday morning lives with Razor Buns on TikTok. And one of the first things that we were talking about is he didn't want to do debate. He wanted to do conversations. And I was like, good, because I don't like debate at all. I think that, trying to prove where somebody's wrong is not my forte. I really like to show where people are more similar. And I think that that's actually like today, I think we had a lot of success with that card specifically because you and I actually have pretty much the core same interest in life. And I think that that's, uh, you know, some might say that could be the thing that maybe a father actually wants out of their son is like, I did create a copy of myself. But, like, you did imprint something on me that was important, and that's eventually something that I've come into. And what's great is that like that is something that we in our own ways, and the ways that we will pursue it will be different, but the core value is wanting to help other people.
Yeah, and that's that. Again, you know, uh, while you were much younger and I was trying to help you along, there's leadership was something that we talked about a lot. We talked about being a
Yeah.
leader a lot,
Yeah.
and
I know.
and but that's leadership is discovering who someone is and helping them to understand that what you want to do is on their pathway to success.
It was so funny. So the new barber, she gets to the school on Monday, and we're setting up the table, and I'm sitting down, and the class is starting to fill up. And I looked at her and I was like, "So you've only ever gotten to see me in like small settings with one to two other people? I hate doing this." And she's like, "What do you mean you hate doing this? Like, we're here, we're doing this." I was like, "Yeah, I hate it so much. I cannot stand public speaking. I literally hate doing this more than anything else." And I force myself to do things like this. She's like, "What do you mean?" Well, I do wedding ceremonies on the side, and that forces me to talk in front of about 100 people. And I'm doing this whole podcast with my dad, and that's not really talking in front of people, but it is to a certain extent. You're thinking you're talking in front of people. But I really hate doing this, so I force myself to do it so that way I can get at least a little bit better at doing it, and that's the only way that I'm going to be able to get through this. Uh, and we just had kind of like this small conversation, and she had never talked to somebody who actively goes in to do things that they don't like doing. And I was like, yeah, it's one of the things that my dad really taught me is like, if you're going to do things and you're going to tell other people how to do it, you better know how to do it, and you better be able to show people how to do it. And that was always a really, really big message throughout growing up in the household. Um, but one of the things that you never saw is when I first started getting into supervisory roles in call centers, the constant trainings were on what is your management style? Are you a manager or are you a leader? And all of those trainings were just so dumb. Like, why on earth would I want to be a manager? That sounds like so much more work. Uh, telling people what to do, not knowing what it is, like not being able to trust people, not having any kind of like backup of if something bad happens, you're gonna look like an idiot in front of people. Like that just seems like way more work than just doing it and showing people how to do it, because the more you do it, the easier it'll get and the more people just trust you. Do it that way. And coming into life realizing, oh, that's the harder path. Uh, oh, it seems so much easier if you just start out that way.
That's just this last week I went to the 16 personalities website and retook the test because I take it usually once a year. I take it um because it does change. There's but it, so it validated that I'm looking at it now. I'm 90% introverted on the scale. So so I'm like there's I mean but that's because most of my world exists inside of me, and it never gets out. But that doesn't mean that I can't go in front of a group of people and talk about a particular topic or hold a conversation with somebody. There's That just means that most of me is always going to stay on the inside of me,
Yeah.
and 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 uh
And at the
and
end of those interactions, you're going to be really emotionally drained and you're going
yeah.
to want to go home and do nothing with nobody so that way your battery recoups.
Yeah, and it's been so doing my academic studies online. It's like the perfect thing for me because I get to do all this work all by myself and think about things. But then when I'm done thinking, I I tell my thoughts in a written form, and I submit that written form, and then I get feedback on it. I get a grade and I get feedback from the instructor and so on and so forth. But none of that is is like in one-on-one dialogue kind of a thing. It's all I write something, they write something. I write something, they write something. And and it's I was talking about this with a woman in my class last night, that one of the things that because we do these discussion boards, right? So like I'm doing a discussion board uh uh on historical and cultural context. Um so it's like it's one thing. So like if you live in Boston, and you go down to Dahlonega, Georgia, and you start having conversations with the people in Dahlonega, Georgia, you are not going to understand what they're talking about because because the mountain people of Dahlonega have a unique life circumstances that have nothing to do with Boston. And they wouldn't understand if they and you start talking about a roundabout or something like that. They're going to be like, a roundabout? What do you mean? You mean a traffic light?
We've got
And
like two stop signs.
exactly. So there's so that's just up and down the East Coast of people at the exact same time. But then it's like, so like, uh, when I was a kid, one of the TV shows that I watched a lot was All in the Family,
Mhm.
which had Archie Bunker as one of the main character. Archie and Edith Bunker were probably the two main characters.
And the show
Uh,
has aged very well by today's standards, I'm sure.
yeah, there, but so like uh, if I were to rewatch All in the Family episode, which I do, yeah, because they're on YouTube.
And it
Uh,
has aged wonderfully for you.
Yeah, I would laugh, and I just think, but if a Gen Zer were to watch the exact same thing, they would literally be shocked and flabbergasted, and they're like, they have this kind of racist, how on earth did you have that? But and that's just in my lifetime. Just in my lifetime, from when I was, an adolescent to when they were an adolescent. The same dialogue would be so historical, cultural context is now think about, you know, somebody on the other side of the world writing something 3,500 years ago, and you're trying to figure out what 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 this person that was writing 3,500 years ago was trying to say to other people that were also living 3,500 years ago. And then you start to realize the challenges associated with theological research, because everything that I'm reading is is at least 2,000 years old. And
And you're on a very, very far end of the chain of a very long telephone game.
Exactly. They're and you're so you have to do so much research about the people that existed at that time, um, before you can understand what any literary work. Uh, it's like you know uh, Shakespeare is timeless. It's true. Shakespeare is, it's timeless. People still enjoy it. But it's only timeless if you take the time to understand what the world was like for Shakespeare.
So it's funny you mentioned that. There's a store here called Half Price Books, and it's a franchise. So there's Half Price Books all across America. It's a used bookstore, and it's one of my favorite places because you can go to this bookstore 3 times a week, and it just has different inventory all the time because people just trade in movies and records and graphic novels, whatever. So I've been rebuilding my movie collection because am not a fan of streaming services. I have my own reasons and my own conspiracies that I can get into later, but ultimately I like physical media, and I like knowing that I'm going to have a fully uncompressed, full audio, full video experience for when I'm doing movies. And I was there today, and they had the Leonardo DiCaprio, Claire Danes, Romeo and Juliet on Blu-ray. And I'm only buying used movies now, so I'm only spending a couple bucks on it. So I'm not actively going out and buying movies. I'll just be like, oh, it's new. Oh my God, they have this. This is one of the greatest, greatest versions of Romeo and Juliet that I think has ever existed because the script already existed. They didn't change anything whatsoever. It is it is Shakespearean Old English in 1990s settings, and it works really, really well. It's this very acid trip artistic take, but it works so great. Um and another Hamlet. Denzel Washington did Hamlet for Apple TV like 2 years ago. And it is one of the best performances, or not Hamlet, sorry, Macbeth. And it is an amazing performance. We had to wind up watching it a second time with the subtitles on, and then we were pausing everything because it would say something about a battle that was going on. It's like, okay, well, now I need to study this so that way I can understand what's going on in Macbeth. And then we've watched this, we kind of have an understanding, but now I need to be able to read Macbeth and understand the visual and then get the context of the history so that way when we get to the ending, we understand why heads roll. And it has so much more context. But Shakespearean by itself is so timeless, and it is just a beautiful language that is easy to understand a couple hundred years later because of how timeless it is. But that is also because we speak English.
Yeah, and that's one of the. It's so. I think I mentioned this last week, but I'm still doing it. I'm learning Hebrew, and one of the things
Yeah.
that I've got to learn these letters, and I'm finding it really difficult. There's because it's like I need to be able to see the character um, and then recall what the name of the character is and what sound it makes. Which is that's what an alphabet is, right? So you look at an A and you're like, oh, that is an A, and the
Makes
A
the
sounds like
sound, yeah.
that's either or one, one of those three sounds. There's, but uh, but it's and like if you're trying to learn German, when I was learning German, it's the same letters, right? So the only real difference is like ch in English is ch, and ch in German is, there's but there's a couple different sounds, and like in Spanish you roll your R's, and in English you just make a single R sound. But but you're basically using the same symbols and the same sounds, and the names of the letters might be a little bit different. But Hebrew is, and
You're on. You're
when
good.
I looked at it the last time on when I played it back, yeah, I just did it too. It just said my upload is complete. But everything after this ends up, the audio is like way wonky. I don't know if you look back at episode 9.
Weird. I'll have to take a look, but uh the only thing that it's showing right
Let
now
me,
is that like
okay,
your
here we go.
audio and video is just a little off.
Anyway, so if it happens the way that it did last time, then like, yeah, for the amount of time that I
We'll
was
have a
gone.
repeatable offense that we'll be able to
So
investigate.
when I start coming, then my audio is at that time, and your audio is the time as if I hadn't broken. So so it's like everything is going perfect in
Oh,
episode 9 until that whatever just happened right now. And maybe I need to start using the because I'm using Chrome and you're using
I'm using whatever Microsoft's
Edge. And then I also have
what are they?
the Mac
Edge. Yeah.
application installed
I'm
on
an
my
edge lord, that's
computer.
right. See, and I like the Riverside app. I like the web app on Edge more than I like the native app. And I was actually trying to record the class using the Riverside app on Monday because I liked the transcriptions, and it goofed up like 12 minutes into it and didn't capture any of it. It wound up not uploading any to the server at all. So this is the good caveat of telling people that when you trust AI fully and you don't maybe review your episodes at the end because you stretch yourself a little bit thin, and then maybe you're like, I just got to get this posted. That there can be errors, and this is why creative people are still gonna survive for a
There's
while because you can't trust AI fully. I think that one of the interesting things about how this is a challenge, and earlier I was mentioning the haircut story from last week. I think one of the hardest challenges that people have is teaching your body how to do something. You can learn how something works, and you can understand different concepts, and you can work that out pretty easily, but like telling your body to do something it's never done before, like that was a concept that I didn't really understand until Brad was really teaching. Like I started going to jujitsu classes, and it's like, oh, I'm like my body is stupid. It doesn't know these things that it doesn't know. And you're trying to associate this knowledge with a sound, and you're used to making sounds, but you're used to making the sounds that our language creates, and it's not the way that you move your tongue or the back of your throat to be able to get these certain inflections. So you're trying to teach your body a new way of doing the thing that it's already been doing. And you're by nature just going to go back into the habits. And that's why if I ever try and speak Spanish, it sounds like me trying to speak Spanish. It doesn't sound native or natural whatsoever. Um, so this kid that I'm having cut my hair, I've I've known him for a long time. He was a shop client, and I've watched him grow up. He was one of the barbers who's not at the shop anymore. It was one of his clients, and I think he started coming in when he was 13. He's 18 now. He's going to barber college, and I had him cut my hair. He is not at a point where he has full grasp of everything yet. And he is definitely still one learning the vernacular and the jargon that's used in the industry. Two, associating that jargon with what it actually physically means. And then two, he hasn't done the things with his hands to be able to know exactly what it is that you're doing in the industry. Um, so what I had been doing, because I was getting my passport photo and I wanted to have a good photo for 10 years, I had been growing my hair out. And I told him very specifically, hey, there's all of this weight that I'm keeping in this area. And all you need to do is really, really light tapers on the edges. And we're just going to keep a whole bunch of weight. So you're just going to come right off of that occipital bone. That's the thing that you're learning right now. And we're going to keep a lot of weight. This will be great, right? So his instructor is watching, and you understand? Yes, I understand. Okay. She walks away, and then he just goes, "Wah," just goes right up the side of my head. And I'm like half expecting this because I know I am literally his third haircut that he has ever done in his life. And I'm like, well, my plans just changed. So the instructor comes by, and as soon as she sees it, she's just comes up to me, sweetie, we're gonna have to take this a whole lot tighter than what you were planning on. Uh, I'm like, yeah, that's fine. It's still gonna be a good haircut. It's just gonna be a different haircut than what I was planning on. And then wound up being like an hour and a half, 2 hours. But like being in that industry, I know what it is. Like you haven't learned how to move your body. You haven't learned all these things. Like you think you're just doing this because you've done this before, but then you realize, oh, there's finesse. There's something that I actually need to learn. And I think that while you're going through these classes,
Yeah,
the
and it's so funny you were talking
speaking
about
it is
doing
probably the
something,
hardest
learning
part of
something
all of
new.
it.
I recently started. I do this every once in a while, but I started tying my shoes in a different way than I normally tie my shoes. So yeah, I don't use Velcro. But it's like so.
So
I
do you not
always
use
tie
Velcro
my
anymore?
shoes in a square knot on a bite. So it's a square knot on a bite. So it looks like bows, but it just lies neater than if you tie a granny knot or whatever. So, and I've always gone, right over left and then left over right to make the square knot. So I'm tying my shoes using the exact same knot. The only thing that's different is I'm going left over right and then right over left, which is which is the same thing, but it's like if you're right-handed and you try and play a guitar left-handed. It's it's the exact opposite. And it's so funny
Mhm.
because I have to think about how I'm tying my shoes when normally I wouldn't have to think about tying my shoes because I've been tying my shoes for so long. Everybody know nobody thinks about it. But if you force yourself to do something that's new, then you're learning. And at my age, atrophy is setting in, and it's, part of atrophy is physical atrophy. The neurons in your muscular fibers start to shrink and go away. Um, but the same thing happens up in your brain, right? So there's neurons up there, and so you've got to try and create some new connections somehow. Uh, no.
Did I tell you about mom talking about Grandma Lucy? So she came and visited us a week or two ago, and we were talking about how she moved to the other side of the state to take care of grandma and grandpa. And grandma's sister had passed away last year. And grandma has not been able to have a lot of conversations ever since she passed away because that was her best friend. And since grandpa works the way that he works and mom is working full time on that side of the state now, like grandma's just kind of she sits at home with her oxygen by herself a lot of the times. And mom's really worried about her because she's seeing more cognitive decline. And that was one of the things that when I did my 23andMe and I was getting all of my, like, what are my health dispositions? That's the stuff that I'm looking for. So, like, this has been a conversation that mom and I have been having for the last probably 2 years of, what am I doing at my age to kind of prepare myself for the things that she's seeing in her mom and the things that we're kind of aware of that we're having to look forward. Um, and, mom is not as tech
I bet they
focused as
still
you
have
and
their
I are.
wired phone at their
And
house.
grandma certainly is not. But the one they have iPhones. Yeah. They have iPhones, and this is the only way that I was actually able to convince mom to get off of Android and onto iPhone. Because I'm like, look, you're going to the other side of the state. You're going to call me. You're going to ask me a question about grandma's phone, and I'm not going to know because I'm not there. And then you're going to be like, well, on my phone, I do this all the time. And I'll be like, Mom, you have an Android phone. I don't know what the fuck it is that you're doing on your phone. I can't explain it. So if you get on an iPhone now, I can show you how it works while you're here. Anyways, yeah, so she can help them with their iPhones. I was asking her, Mom, what are you doing with AI? She's like, nothing. Like, I don't know anything about that at all. I was like, you need to get grandma to use AI. And as much as I think that this is one of the weirdest things that I'm actually going to suggest to you, I think that this is really good because there's a lot of research right now on people who are using AI to combat loneliness. And it's like, is that the perfect solution? No. But is it a solution? Absolutely it is. And I've programmed so many of them to have so many different personalities. I've got one that's kind of a spiritual guide that I use for studies of the abstract that I believe in. And then I have one that's a sarcastic asshole just so I can get it out. Literally you can have it be whatever you want it to be, but you don't have to teach grandma anything. You can just have a conversation with it. So she's trying to ask me how would this ever be a benefit to grandma, and I pull up the phone, I bring up ChatGPT, I put on the voice application, and I say, hey, ChatGPT, let's just have a really quick conversation. We need to come up with a solution for my grandma who's in her mid 70s. She's starting to face cognitive decline and doesn't have a lot of opportunities to be able to have conversations with people on a regular basis, and I want to be able to keep her sharp for as long as possible. What is a game that you and I can play back and forth to be able to help with cognition, but not require any kind of input from me other than just talking to you? Oh, that's a wonderful idea. Let's be proactive about this. You know what we could do is a word association game. I'm going to say a word and then you say the word that you think of immediately and we'll go back and forth. Word association, word association, word association, word association. We do that for like 45, 60 seconds. And then on a dime, I was like, you know what? I'm actually getting a little bit bored with this game. Can you give me something different with just a little bit of a challenge that will still help with this exact same goal? Yeah, let's play 20 questions. And I'm literally like in front of mom. I have my phone up on my little tripod thing, and I'm just talking to my phone, having all of these little games, being able to have a relationship with something. And that's where I think that there's some practicality. And is that kind of a bastardization of the human experience? Yeah, you should be able to do that with
There's
another
a
human. But if you don't have another
uh,
human,
you made me think of
keep
two
yourself
things.
sharp.
One is there. I remember I met your grandma's family, on a business trip. Your mom came to meet me, I think in Charlotte, and then we rented a car and went and it was like a family reunion or whatever. Um, and her kin are the nicest, sweetest, kindest people that you can ever I mean it's like I was just overwhelmed with um how kind they are and how um uh you know, emotionally intelligent is probably a good way to put it. Because, I mean, they're mountain folk. So yeah, there's,
Yeah, they were a
and,
big family because I think she was the
there's,
youngest of 13.
uh, but they're, so, their level of, understanding of the way that people feel and and their connection with the feelings that somebody was having, where it was just really, really amazing to me. But the other thing you were talking about loneliness, and maybe you could figure out a way this may be helpful, but so I did some work on loneliness and I the definition that I came up for loneliness is the perceived absence of another. So, um, you can literally be sitting at a table having a conversation with someone, but you perceive some part of them is absent. And because you perceive that absence, you actually feel lonely while you're sitting there talking to somebody. You can be in a room filled with people at a party, having lots of, casual conversations. But if you wish that a particular person was with you, you perceive their absence. And because you perceive their absence, we respond to that with the sensations of loneliness. So, my thesis is that the beginning of loneliness is the desire for presence. Because if you don't desire to be present with someone, then you wouldn't perceive their absence, right? I mean, if it's like, well, the person's not there, but you don't have any desire for their presence. So, so the way to combat loneliness is not to try and not feel the loneliness or to distract yourself from the other. It's really to think about that desire and what the pleasant feelings that desire provides for you. So I do this with your grandma Pat a lot. I'll start to think about her and she's dead, right? So she's not with me anymore, and I perceive that absence, and that brings up feelings of loneliness. But if I want to combat it, I don't distract myself from thinking about grandma. I I dive into that. And I'm like, oh man, I remember this one time we did this, that, and the other thing. And I just think about these wonderful memories that I do have. And 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 that's not a distraction, but it's a way of erasing the loneliness because I get the uh
It's your body telling you you
yeah.
need to focus
So
on this, and it's
and
you
I don't
giving
know
your
how
body what
there's
your body's
but
asking
if
for.
um maybe a project like, oh man, why don't you um uh make uh a photo album, a photo journal of you and your sister and the times that you had together. And that may seem
Or honestly, have it interview her. talk about her life and all the times that she's had, and even that could be a wonderful practical aspect
Yeah,
of
in fact,
that's
I
a way
read
that she can tell her
a
story
research
when we're on the
paper
other
that
side of the
was
state.
it was speculative, but it was like, oh well, one of the ways that social media and AI could be used would be if you've got a social media account and you use that social media account to train an AI, then you could have the AI dialogue as the person who had that social media account because if you yeah, yeah,
That worries me so much. Oh man, that worries me so much. Like, I know you've seen my posts where I'm like, "This is all carefully crafted
yep,
horseshit."
yeah, yeah.
Like,
There's
there would be a carefully crafted
so
horseshit
and there
Christopher.
that would be a challenge, you know. But but if you could train an AI on a person, on a particular person, then that there's no reason why that AI couldn't. You know you could literally feel like you're having a conversation with your mother, um, 10 years after your mother passes.
You have Apple TV, right?
Yep.
You have Apple TV with
Severance.
your one subscription, right? You need to watch Severance. You really should.
No.
And the second season just ended. Have you heard anything about this show at all? Okay, I'm so excited that I get to be the person that tells you about this show. First off, it's directed by Ben Stiller. Really, really good show. Second, there was a creative disagreement, and it was off the air for like 3 years. It just was on this crazy hiatus with a gigantic cliffhanger at the end of the first season. So for context, the day that mom stayed with us was the day that the season 2 season finale came out. And we were supposed to hang out with mom that night, but the show was so important to us that she gets over. We're like, Mom, I need you to understand we've been waiting years for this episode. And I know you're here tonight, but how would you feel about watching this episode with us where you're literally jumping in the middle of a really weird story? And she's like, well, I think I might watch. Okay, then we're just gonna watch Heretic. We're gonna watch Hugh Grant. It'll be completely different instead. Um, so the idea of the show Severance is there is a company out there called Lumen, and Lumen is just a mysterious company that has a floor called the Severed Floor. And the Severed Floor, in order for you to get a job at this company on this floor, you have to go through this controversial medical procedure that allows the company to hold you to a standard that's more strict than an NDA. So they implant a microchip in your brain, and when you go to work, you go into an elevator. And the elevator, as you're going up and down the elevator, activates the implant that has severed your personality into two personalities. You have Steve, the personal life, and you have Steve, the work life. So as soon as you go into the elevator, it activates. And now you are work, Steve. You are perfectly always at work and you are living in your work environment, and everything that happens at work just stays at work. And then when you go back into the elevator, you leave as life, Steve. And you can live your life knowing that's fantastic because I don't even know what I did at work. And it is a perfect work life balance. So the story kind of goes into motion when you realize like, well, what the hell are they doing? What kind of company would ask that of somebody? What kind of person would what are they trying to escape out of their life that they would do something like that for a job? Like what kind of person takes that kind of a job? Uh Secondly, what is their job? What are they doing? But then it gets into like some even deeper philosophical questions. Like, let's say the work personality, that's your innie, that's your inner personality, and your external personality is your outie. So you've got your innie and your outie. Well, if your outie is you, but it's subjected to external criteria, and your innie is just kind of your subconscious self in a very sterile environment, which one of those is your authentic you? Which one is the one that has more personage than the other one? And let's say, for instance, your outie has a relationship that your innie doesn't know about, but your innie is truly connected with somebody at work. Is that cheating or is it not cheating? So it kind of goes into all these different ethical dilemmas, and it is one of the most well-written stories. And the second season just ended like 2 weeks ago, so you wouldn't have to wait 3 years like I did, asking every single person who's watched the show, "What are the goats about?
There's
I need to know what the
there's
goats are
I watched a
about."
movie called The Gorge. I think
Uh,
that's what it's called.
yeah, th- I I saw the trailer and that was like, I bet I know exactly what's gonna
Yeah, it was
happen in
there's a
every
I
single
I
scene, the
thought that
scene
the
leading up
whole
to it.
you know what was in the gorge was kind of a uh it was really weird the way that it was done. But it what made me think of it is it's the same kind of company. There's so like all these people who are they like get selected to be the guardians of the gorge. Well, as soon as you're done with your shift, they kill you.
Yeah, it's like you're gonna you can't know these secrets. Um, there was a movie that the movie we watched with mom instead, you might be really interested in. It's Hugh Grant's last movie that he did with A24 called Heretic. And I think A24 makes some really interesting horror films because when I look at them as a production studio, they kind of come up with this idea of let's scare one really specific group of people. And that really specific group of people will have a very specific horror movie for them. So, like the movie The Witch, it is a great movie and it will terrify you to death if you're a Puritan living in New England in the 1700s. And the horror movie is about what if there was a witch in your family and you got sentenced to be banished to the outskirts of a settlement? And what if that was true? That's the entire horror movie. Midsummer is basically about, it's really scary for Americans? Culture that's not America. Let's have an entire movie where somebody invites them into a Scandinavian culture to be a part of their aging ritual. It's a wonderful movie. I love it. It is so much better the second time around when you're watching it from the perspective of sharing culture as opposed to experiencing culture. Um, the Green Room is a movie about, and I loved this. This was when I had the first realization because of what Brad used to do when he would go on tour with bands. It's about a band that plays a club
Oh
that they don't
man.
know anything about. And in the middle of their set, they realize they're at a Nazi bar. That's a terrifying. Yeah. And Patrick Stewart is in this movie. It's amazing. Um, so this movie Heretic is simply about what would happen if two Mormon missionaries went to the wrong house. And that's the horror movie. But it's not about the typical Mormon missionaries that you'd think of. It's about two female missionaries and what happens when they go to the wrong guy's house. And what was interesting is in the beginning of the movie, I am watching this dialogue between these two Mormon missionary girls. And in the back of my head, I'm just thinking, man, they're just cheesing it up. This is like like this is almost satirical how they're kind of making fun of Mormons. And then Haley, who was raised in the church and was married in the Salt Lake Temple, just like says,
That's funny.
"Oh my God, they got this right." And I'm like, "Oh, holy crap, okay." And Hugh Grant is this guy that, especially from my perspective, he is a villain that I relate with for 99% of the movie. And it's fantastic because I've had missionaries come to my door, and I know what I have done to missionaries that have come to my door when I've been a little bit less than patient. And this movie, the more that Hugh Grant is just Hugh Grant, and the more that he's this wonderful Hugh Grant of a human, the creepier and weirder the movie is. And the more you're just like, where is this going? Oh my God, what is going to happen with these girls? But yeah, I think that would be one that would be a really, really interesting, going back to the conversation earlier of faith versus reason. That's kind of the story of that movie. And I'll anybody who's familiar with A24, graphic movie.
Well, we should probably
Very graphic
wrap
movie.
things
So
up for
just be aware.
for this episode.
We actually talked about pleasant
we
things,
started out with
just like
Elon Musk,
some
though.
movies.
There's
Not just Elon Musk.
probably.
We'll always have stuff to talk about with Elon Musk. That's the nice thing is, as
There's
long as this podcast goes,
well,
he'll
hey,
always have goals to
want
get to
make
Mars.
sure that we say thank you for the people who are watching us. We enjoy having conversations, but we're really honored and privileged that you take the time to listen to our conversations. So thank you very much. And if you know somebody who maybe has a difficult relationship with somebody in their family, and they aren't able to talk with one another, send them a link to the Supper Talk podcast, and maybe we can show them some ways of opening up dialogue across generational and cultural lines.
And if you don't have anyone in your life that you're struggling to talk with, maybe you could just send the podcast to them anyways and just say, hey, you should follow this father and son duo. You can follow them on Spotify, on Amazon. You can even follow them on YouTube if you wanted to. And, if they followed us and they left some comments down below on the things that you want to hear us talk about, we would love to know what it is that you guys want to hear us ramble on about, because we will talk for as long as
Take
you
care.
will listen.
See y'all.
And we really do appreciate you guys listening to us. So until next time, you guys be well.